Okay, so you want to own a medieval castle. You picture the business first. A stone tower above the valley, thick walls, a gatehouse, a courtyard full of servants, horses, carts, and visitors. Villages below the hill, fields around the village, a mill by the stream, a road passing through your land, tenants bringing rent, merchants paying fees, everyone looking up at your walls and understanding who controls the place. From the outside, it looks like the safest asset in the medieval world. Land produces food, tenants pay dues, the mill takes a share, the road brings travelers, the court brings fines and fees, and the castle itself seems to turn wealth into permanence. Stone feels like money that learned how to stand upright. So the surface math looks simple. Own the castle, control the land, collect from the people below, let the walls protect the income. That is the dream. Here's the first crack. The castle does not feed itself. The walls do not pay rent. The tower does not produce grain. Every stone you build has to be paid for by something outside the wall. That is the problem. A medieval castle was not really a building business. Not really. It was a land business, a tax and fee business, a staff business, a food business, a fuel business, a maintenance business, a prestige business, and above all, it was a regional control machine that only made sense if the countryside around it could carry the cost. The tower is what people notice. The ledger is what decides whether the family survives. To understand the trap, start with the most important thing about owning a castle. A castle on its own is almost useless. Worse than useless, in fact. A strong stone castle in the middle of empty land is not an asset. It is a cold, hungry box. It needs staff, food, fuel, repairs, animals, guards, administrators, and constant attention. If there are no farms, no tenants, no road, no mill, no market, no court rights, no bridge, no river crossing, and no reason for money to pass through the area, the castle is only a monument to bad math. The real business was outside the walls. The castle was the office. The estate was the business. That is the first hidden product. Not stone. Control. The castle gave the owner a place from which to collect rents, hold court, manage land, store supplies, host important people, guard routes, and remind the region that the rights around it were enforceable. That could be powerful, but power is expensive to perform. The first cost is construction, and construction is where the dream starts to become heavy. A small timber and earth fortification could be raised much more cheaply than a major stone castle. But the kind of castle people imagine, the stone walls, towers, gatehouse, chapel, great hall, kitchens, stores, stables, wells, and private chambers, was a massive capital project. You do not simply buy stone. You buy quarrying, you buy masons, you buy carpenters, you buy lime, you buy timber, you buy ironwork, you buy transport, you buy food for workers, you buy time. And the transport alone can become brutal. Stone is heavy, timber is bulky, lime has to be produced, lead, iron, tools, roofing material, carts, animals, and skilled labor all have to reach the site. A castle placed on high ground may be stronger, more visible, and more impressive, but every cart climbing that hill adds cost. This is why water access, roads, quarries, and local materials mattered so much. The site was not chosen only for drama. It was chosen because the building had to be possible. Carnarvon Castle in Wales shows the scale at the royal level. Cadw describes Edward I's project at Carnarvon as taking 47 years and costing around £25,000, a huge fortune for the time. Historic Royal Palaces notes that Edward spent nearly £80,000 on Welsh castles between 1277 and 1304. Those numbers are not there because every noble built Carnarvon. Most did not. They are there to show the principle. The more the castle was meant to project power, the more power had to be spent before it ever earned anything back. And that is only construction. The building opens. Now the real costs begin. A castle is not a house that happens to have thick walls. It is a working institution. World History Encyclopedia notes that a large English medieval castle could have a household staff of at least 50 people, including cooks, grooms, carpenters, masons, falconers, musicians, and armed personnel, with skilled figures such as the steward, chaplain, and marshal paid by the year. That is a payroll. Even if some servants are paid by the day, housed, fed, or dismissed when the lord travels, the household still has to function when the owner wants authority to look permanent. The steward keeps accounts. The marshal oversees horses, stables, and the men responsible for order. The chaplain handles services and often correspondence. The cook and kitchen staff feed the household. The grooms manage horses. The carpenters and masons handle repairs. The laundresses clean clothing, linens, and tablecloths. The porters watch gates. The clerks write, count, seal, and record. The castle looks like stone. It runs on people. And people eat. Food is one of the great hidden costs of the castle. Not feast food, daily food. Bread, ale, grain, meat when available, fish, cheese, vegetables, pulses, salt, herbs, and endless ordinary supplies for the noble family, the household staff, visiting officials, travelers of status, retainers, messengers, workers, and everyone else whose presence keeps the castle alive. The kitchen is not a detail. It is a machine. Every servant in the castle is also a mouth inside the castle's accounts. Every guest is an expense with social meaning attached. Every important visit tests whether the owner can afford to appear like a person worth obeying. That is the strange trap of aristocratic hospitality. You cannot always choose to be cheap. A merchant can close the door and save money. A lord who looks poor loses authority. The Great Hall is not only a dining room, it is a theater of control. The food, tablecloths, candles, seating order, servants, music, and warmth all tell people where power lives. So the castle spends money to make authority visible. Now think about fuel. Stone holds strength better than heat. A castle can be impressive and still miserable to warm. Thick walls, high rooms, drafts, damp, open halls, stairways, kitchens, private chambers, and storage spaces all require heat, light, and maintenance. Wood has to be cut. Wood has to be hauled. Wood has to be stored. Charcoal may be needed for metalwork. Candles and rushlights have to be supplied. Fires have to be tended. The customer, tenant, or visitor sees a warm hall. The steward sees fuel leaving the estate. If the castle has its own woodland, fuel may look cheaper, but it is not free. Workers have to cut it. Carts have to move it. Woodland has to be managed. Use too much, and the estate loses long-term value. The castle is burning the land in order to look alive. Now add maintenance. Stone feels permanent because it outlives people. That does not mean it needs no money. Roofs fail. Timbers rot. Lead is costly. Tiles break. Mortar wears. Drains clog. Wells need care. Bridges need repair. Doors and gates need ironwork. Stables need constant attention. Kitchens consume equipment. Walls need inspection. Roads around the castle need work. Even the impressive parts of the building can become financial liabilities. A tall tower means stairs, floors, roofing, windows, shutters, fireplaces, and stonework. A gatehouse means doors, hinges, bars, rooms above, guards, and maintenance. A moat or ditch means earthwork, water management, bridges, and constant upkeep. The romantic mind sees defenses. The ledger sees surfaces that decay. And deferred maintenance is one of the cruelest costs. Delay a small roof repair and water enters the timbers. Delay stonework and a wall becomes more expensive later. Delay road or bridge work and tenants, carts, supplies, and messengers all move less efficiently. The castle can still look powerful while the accounts are quietly losing the future. Now the revenue side. This is where the castle becomes a business machine. The obvious revenue is rent from tenants. Peasants, tenant farmers, and local households owe cash, labor, produce, or services depending on the estate, period, and local arrangements. The castle or manor center collects, records, stores, and enforces these obligations. But rent is only the beginning. The owner may control mills. That matters because grain has to be processed. If tenants are required or expected to use the lord's mill, the mill takes a share or fee. Across a whole estate, the mill can be one of the most reliable income lines because people cannot easily stop needing flour. The owner may hold court rights. Local disputes, inheritance matters, small offenses, transfers of land rights, and customary obligations can all create fees, fines, and records. The court is not just administration, it is revenue attached to authority. The owner may collect tolls or fees at bridges, roads, river crossings, markets, fairs, or gates if he has the right to do so. The owner may control woodland, fishing rights, grazing rights, hunting rights, ovens, presses, storage, and other local resources. The best castle owners did not think of the castle as the source of income. They thought of it as the machine that allowed income to be collected. The wall protected the office. The office controlled the estate. The estate paid for the wall. That loop had to work. If the loop broke, the castle became a burden. Now put yourself inside an ordinary day. The steward reviews rents. A clerk checks accounts. A tenant comes about a dispute. A messenger arrives with news from another estate. The kitchen prepares food. The grooms manage horses. A mason looks at a wall that needs work. The marshal checks personnel and stables. The chaplain handles correspondence. A cart brings grain. A guest arrives and has to be hosted properly. Nothing dramatic has happened. No grand ceremony. No emergency. Just a normal day. And money is leaving the castle in every direction. Wages, food, fuel, repairs, horse feed, cloth, candles, kitchen supplies, messenger costs, legal costs, hospitality, administration. The castle is not expensive only in extraordinary moments. It is expensive because ordinary life inside it is never small. Now put it into a year. In spring, fields need attention. Roads improve. Tenants come and go. Repairs that waited through winter become visible. Roofs, drains, bridges, carts, and buildings demand work. In summer, travel increases. Guests arrive. Work on buildings is easier, but labor is also needed in the fields. The estate may look productive, but the costs of managing that productivity rise with it. In autumn, harvest brings income, but also pressure. Grain has to be collected, processed, stored, accounted for, and protected from waste. A good harvest can save the year. A bad harvest can expose every fixed cost the castle was carrying. In winter, the castle becomes a fuel problem. The household still eats, horses still need care, staff still work, the hall still needs heat and light. Travel slows, repairs become harder, and the estate waits for spring while the bills keep moving. This is the first big trap. Income is seasonal, status is not. The castle must look like a castle all year. The estate may only pay well in certain seasons. Now build a simple ledger. Imagine a noble family with a medium-sized stone castle, several villages, fields, a mill, some woodland, local court rights, a road crossing, stables, a household staff, and a small group of men responsible for order and security. On paper, the family looks secure. Rent comes in from tenants, the mill produces steady fees, the court produces fines and payments, woodland supplies fuel, road traffic creates occasional income. The castle gives authority. Visitors see walls and assume wealth. Now subtract the part the valley cannot see. Subtract household staff. Subtract food for staff, family, guests, and workers. Subtract fuel. Subtract horse feed. Subtract repairs to roofs, gates, bridges, wells, kitchens, walls, stables, and roads. Subtract clerks, messengers, legal administration, hospitality, clothing, candles, tools, carts, and craftsmen. Subtract bad harvests. Subtract tenants who cannot pay fully. Subtract the cost of keeping authority visible. Now the castle looks different. The estate may be wealthy in land, but land wealth is not always liquid.
You cannot easily peel a stone off the tower and use it to pay the mason. You cannot tell the kitchen to wait until the next harvest. You cannot feed horses with prestige. The castle owner can look rich and still be short of cash. That is the old aristocratic problem. Assets everywhere, cash under pressure. The valley sees inheritance, the accounts see timing, and timing can ruin a powerful family more quietly than any visible disaster. This is where debt enters quietly. Debt does not always arrive because the owner is foolish. Sometimes it arrives because the castle's costs are badly timed. The roof needs work before harvest. The household must be supplied before rents are collected. A guest has to be hosted this month, not next year. A daughter, son, alliance, lawsuit, court appearance, or royal demand may require spending before the estate has turned grain, labor, dues, and fees into usable money.
So the owner borrows against tomorrow's income. That can work if tomorrow's income arrives. But if the next harvest is weak, or tenants pay late, or repairs run over budget, the debt becomes another fixed cost inside a building already full of fixed costs. Interest does not care that the Great Hall looks impressive. The lender does not care that the family's name is old. The mason does not care that the estate is technically valuable. Everyone wants payment in a form that can actually be spent. This is why land-rich families could still feel poor in the accounts. Their wealth was real, but much of it was slow. Grain had to be harvested, rents had to be collected, disputes had to be settled, tenants had to survive, roads had to stay open, mills had to keep turning. The castle could sit above all of it looking permanent, while the money underneath moved slowly, seasonally, and sometimes not at all. And the castle made that timing problem worse because it punished retreat. If a store owner has a bad year, he may stock fewer goods. If a blacksmith has a bad month, he may delay buying extra iron. But a castle owner cannot easily become half a lord. He can reduce some expenses, but every visible cut sends a message. Fewer servants means less authority. A cold hall means less hospitality. A neglected gate means less control. A half-repaired roof means everyone can see the family is under pressure. In a world built on reputation, cutting costs can damage the very thing that allows the owner to collect income in the first place. That is the fourth hidden cost. Prestige is not decoration. Prestige is operating capital. The castle spends money to convince people that the owner is still worth obeying, trusting, visiting, marrying into, borrowing from, lending to, and dealing with. The walls are part of that story, but so are the meals, the servants, the horses, the clean hall, the repaired bridge, the stocked kitchen, the orderly court, and the sense that the estate is being run by someone whose power has not started to rot. The dangerous part is that prestige can become addictive. Spend enough and the castle looks strong. Spend too little and the castle looks weak. Spend too much and the ledger becomes weak before the walls do. In the optimistic scenario, the castle works. The estate is well managed, the mill is productive, the tenants can pay. The steward keeps clean accounts. The staff is large enough to run the place, but not so large that it devours the surplus. The owner controls a road, bridge, market, or other flow of people and goods. Repairs are done early. Woodland is managed. Hospitality is impressive, but not ruinous. In that world, the castle is a powerful asset. Not because the walls make money.
Because the walls help control the things that make money. Land, mills, courts, roads, tenants, storage, records, reputation. The castle turns scattered obligations into a visible center. That is valuable. But in the bad scenario, only a few ordinary things have to go wrong. A harvest fails, the roof needs major work, a bridge washes out, a key tenant village pays late. The lord is required to host important visitors. Fuel costs rise because woodland has been overused. The steward is careless or dishonest. The family borrows to maintain appearances. From the outside, the castle still looks rich. Inside the ledger, it is already becoming fragile. That is the castle trap. The castle cannot shrink gracefully. A shopkeeper can reduce stock. A tavern keeper can close a room. A caravan owner can delay a journey. But a castle has walls, staff, reputation, obligations, and expectations. It is built to look permanent. It is terrible at looking modest.
And that means it can pressure the owner into spending money simply to avoid appearing weak. The Great Hall cannot look empty too often. The gate cannot fall into visible neglect. The household cannot be dismissed without consequences. Guests cannot always be turned away. Repairs cannot be ignored forever. Authority has overhead. That is the core of the business. A castle was a control machine with enormous fixed costs. If the land, roads, tenants, mills, courts, and rights around it produced enough surplus, the castle made sense. If they did not, the castle became the most expensive proof that the family had overreached. So who really got paid? Sometimes the castle owner did, especially if he controlled fertile land, a strong route, a reliable mill, productive tenants, good courts, and a disciplined household. But many other people got paid first. Masons got paid. Carpenters got paid. Roofers, smiths, cooks, grooms, clerks, laundresses, messengers, carters, and fuel suppliers got paid. The steward and skilled officers got paid. Lenders got paid if the owner borrowed. The monarch or greater lord could demand service, taxes, fees, or loyalty that carried its own cost. Guests consumed value without always returning cash. Even tenants, in a strange way, could capture value when the castle provided order, storage, market access, road management, and protection for the local economy. The castle created value for the region. That did not mean the owner kept all of it. The weak owner saw stone and thought stone meant wealth. The strong owner saw the same stone and asked a colder question. What income does this wall help me control? Which rights pay reliably? Which staff are necessary? Which repairs cannot wait? Which ceremonies are worth the cost? Which tenants can survive another levy? Which road or mill actually feeds the estate? How much prestige can I afford? That was the real business. The castle charged for the problems created by land, distance, law, storage, status, and local order. But it also absorbed those problems. When the roof failed, it was your cash. When the harvest failed, it was your rent. When the mill slowed, it was your income. When guests arrived, it was your table. When the wall cracked, it was your mason. When the steward kept poor accounts, it was your estate. When status demanded spending, it was your ledger. So yes, a medieval castle could make a family powerful. In the right place, with the right estate, the right rights, the right tenants, the right staff, and the right discipline, it could become the center of a regional economy. But it was never easy money. The castle was only the surface. The real business was control. The tenant thought he was paying the lord. He was really paying into a machine of land, records, courts, mills, roads, storage, staff, repairs, and public authority. The owner thought he was holding a fortress. What he was really holding was a stone institution that converted agricultural surplus into visible power, and visible power back into constant expense. That is the old ledger lesson. A castle was not rich because its walls were high. It survived when the owner understood what those walls were costing, what income they actually protected, and how much prestige the estate could afford before the stone became a burden. Because in the medieval world, a castle could dominate the valley. It could impress travelers. It could gather rent. It could hold court. It could make a family look permanent. And still, if the land below could not feed the machine above, the castle did not become a safe path to wealth. It became an expensive stone ledger, recording every quiet way power had to be paid for.